الفلاح حي على الصلاح حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Amma ba'd, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we seek His aid, we ask His forgiveness. We repent to Him and we rely on Him. We seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil of our souls and our deeds, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided, no one can misguide. In whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not guided, no one can guide. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his final messenger. يقول الله تعالى في كتاب العزيز أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخرين. As always, brothers and sisters, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to be here on this blessed day of Jum'ah. This is truly a blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to be here today. And we cannot afford to take this for granted. We cannot afford to take it for granted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again going to give you an opportunity to be present, to hear the reminder, and to partake in the blessings that Jum'ah has to offer you. We thank Him subhanahu wa ta'ala as we always do. We thank Him because He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that is deserving of thanks. Brothers and sisters, today I want us to continue our conversation, and our theme has been for months now, our spiritual wellness. And today, inshallah, we are going to have a short conversation regarding dua, and how dua either affects our lives or it should affect our lives. And if we're not in the habit of communicating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a regular basis like this, we are truly losing a lot. I chose a verse from Surah Ghafir, which is Surah 40, the verse is verse 60, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And your Lord says, call on me, I will answer your prayer. But those who are too arrogant to serve me will surely find themselves in hell in humiliation." This verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to all of us. He has declared that our relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be one that is continuous. And He makes it clear that those who cannot find themselves to have a relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala are arrogant. He referred to it as kibr. And kibr is arrogance. If you cannot figure out how to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala central in your life. We're going to talk today about, how we should use dua in our lives. as opposed to using dua as a tool or as a reaction to an incident that occurred in our lives. Something happened to me. I'm not doing well. Let me make dua. But any other time, across any other space in my life, am I calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? My success as well as my failures. You know, often we call on dua, call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we're in need. Oh Allah, help me. But do we call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He grants us success? When we're doing well? When He blesses us with all of the things that He blesses us with, do we call on Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and thank Him the way He ought to be thanked? Do we call on Him and ask Him when He blesses us with these things that He protect us from envy and jealousy, and protect us from ourselves, that we don't go too far? Because ni'mah has a way of affecting you that way if you're not centered. Ni'mah can be a fitna. Ni'mah can be a fitna. Allah will give you and He will test you with that which He gives you. Are we making dua that way? Are we using dua that way? Are we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq? Are we asking Him for guidance? Do we make dua that way? Or is dua something that we only do when we're afflicted? Dua has to be a constant in our lives, brothers and sisters. Our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a constant relationship that affects everything that we do. And in our faith, we have prescribed du'as. We need to make use of that. And even if you don't know the prescribed du'as, you can still make dua. Your authentic dua, which is the best form of dua. Making sure, of course, that you are addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the right way, the way He ought to be addressed. That you are not disrespectful in your dua. That you call on Him the right way. And He reminds you in the Quran to call on Him on a regular basis. I just shared with you today one verse. There are various verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls on you, the believer, to call on Him. Because you are in need of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever it is you have because of Him. How can you not call on Him? How can you not thank Him? Whatever it is that He has protected you from, things that you're not even aware of, you're only protected because of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you not call on Him? Dua has to be a habit, brothers and sisters. And often when we find ourselves in spaces where our lives are out of sync, and we can't figure out what's wrong. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, at least I think I am. I'm praying. You know, I try to be nice, all that good stuff. But we still find ourselves in these spaces. And if you find yourself in this space, I'm recommending that you do some evaluation. There's some things that we need to look at with regards to our dua. When we call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we're not seeing the results that we're hoping for, not you're deserving of, the results that we're hoping for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers your dua in His time, in His way, not in your time, in your way. But I want to share a few other things with you. A few other things that are connected to what we've been talking about for months now. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your dua, if you are calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you don't trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer your dua, then there's no need in you making dua. There's a hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to a man who came to him asking him about, and the question was, O Messenger of Allah, he came with his camel, O Messenger of Allah, should I tie my camel and trust in Allah, or should I let it roam freely and trust in Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Aqilha wa tawakkal." That you should tie your camel and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can't call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I'm not putting forth any effort. I'm not doing my work. I got to do my work. Not only do I have to do my work, but I also have to trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inshallah going to answer my dua. And if you do not trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer your dua, Allah is not going to answer your dua. Why is He not going to answer your dua? The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in another hadith, a hadith Qudsi, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ana 'inda dhanni 'abdi bi." I am as my servant sees me. Plain and simple. Your perception of your Lord is important. So that's what you're going to see and that's what you're going to get. You have to be hopeful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving. You know that He is the provider. All of His attributes, you have to believe in that. And when you go to Him, you have to go to Him with conviction. You have to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to protect you, that He's going to relieve you, etc., etc., etc. And sometimes we go to the wrong people. Sometimes when we're in need, we don't go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we go and complain to fulan and fulana as if they can help you. You skip over Allah and you go to His creation. And your dua is nowhere in the mix. How can you not go to your Lord but go to, let me call a brother fulan or sister fulan as, I'm in a jam. And your first order of business is for you to call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you haven't done that. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an afterthought. After you've done all these other steps, oh yeah, by the way, let me make dua. Another thing that we have to consider. And we talk about this all the time. And you're seeking forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, making tawbah is part of this equation as well. That you are in a habit of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness on a regular basis. That's part of what you do. When you go to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala humbly and you ask Him for something that you're in this space. You're one of those who seeks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness on a regular basis. You make tawbah on a regular basis. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will accept your dua. That's one of the keys. What does He say subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran? This is in Surah Hud, Surah 11. And actually, there are a couple of verses that are similar to this verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأن استغفروا ربكم ثم توبوا إليه يمتعكم متاعا حسنا إلى أجل مسمى ويؤتي كل ذي فضل فضله وإن تولوا فإني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم كبير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, seek your Lord's forgiveness and turn to Him in repentance, that He may grant you enjoyment and good for a term appointed. He's connected istighfar, seeking forgiveness, to success. No istighfar if you're one of those arrogant people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in the previous verse in Surah Ghafir. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. And your Lord has said, call on me, I will forgive you. Then He said what? Those who are arrogant. You don't want to be one of those people. We talk about this every week, about the importance of us seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness regularly. Regularly. Every Friday we talk about tawbah. Every Friday we talk about tawbah. We continue to talk about tawbah. We continue to talk about the importance of asking for forgiveness. Humble yourself. And if you don't understand why I'm asking for forgiveness, just do. Don't overthink it. If you can't figure out where you've gone wrong, ask for forgiveness. Don't overthink it. Just do. Your example is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Your example is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would seek forgiveness more than 100 times each day. And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was what we refer to as ma'soom. One, he did not commit sin. And two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already forgiven him. Yet he still sought forgiveness. How can we not? You can't be arrogant. You can't come to your Lord with arrogance and expect that He subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to respond to you. We should also consider, this is something else that, again, over the past months we've been discussing, which is dhikr and remembrance. Dhikr or remembrance. You have to. You got to. We're talking about spiritual wellness. Part of your spiritual wellness is that you do dhikr. You remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout your day. How that looks, that varies. Whatever you can do. But Allah should be in your consciousness on a regular. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in your consciousness, meaning that when life happens to you, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the first thing that comes to mind, When something happens to you, when your response isn't centered in, or the words that you utter don't include the word Allah, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, A'udhu Billah, Astaghfirullah. These are all phrases that we know. But if we're not in the habit of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you get sidetracked, by life, what you normally do is what's going to come out. So if you're in the habit of something happens to you, you go off the deep end and you behave in a jahiliyyah way, that's a reflection of where you're at spiritually. And if you're not someone, and sometimes, some people say, life catches you off guard. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as you being caught off guard. Your responses are what's in you. So if you give that jahiliyyah is rooted in you, and I'm using the word jahiliyyah, and we know what I mean by jahiliyyah. Those are your responses, and your responses are not, let me call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks a lot of ways. But all of those ways includes you calling or you using His name. Ya Allah. But if He's not in your life like that, you don't have a relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala like that, it's not going to be there. So as opposed to you getting closer to Him, the likelihood of you moving further away from Him is extremely likely. Because then what happens is your response is you harm yourself. You start thinking crazy, saying crazy stuff, saying things that are unbefitting of a person that has Iman. And sometimes you regain your faith and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you're so jammed up that, you completely lose hope. I want you to consider Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. And this is a dua. We've talked about this dua quite often over the past couple of months. When he faced his dilemma, what did he do? What did he say? لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. Called on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he called on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happened? His dua was answered. He called on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his dua was answered. We have to be in the habit of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to engage with the Quran. These are things that you hear, you've been hearing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And we hear these things over and over and over and over and over again because these things have to take root. Dua has to be a habit. Dhikr has to be a habit. Engaging with the Quran has to be a habit. These things that we continue to repeat over and over and over again have to be habits. They have to be habits. Another thing that will benefit you with regards to your dua is service. We talk about service every week. There isn't a week that passes that we don't talk. We remind ourselves, remind you about the importance of engaging in some type of service. This is core to your faith. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith narrated by Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he says that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Man nafasa an mu'minin kurbatan min kurab ad-dunya, nafasa Allahu anhu kurbatan min kurab yawm al-qiyamah." Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam here is talking about coming to the aid and the assistance of others, and how that impacts your akhirah. That when you come to the aid and the assistance of your brothers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide ease for you in the hereafter. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the same hadith, وَمَنْ يَسَّرَ عَنْ مُعْسِرٍ, someone alleviates the hardship for someone, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will alleviate hardship for that person in the dunya and the akhirah. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَمَنْ سَتَرَ مُسْلِمًا سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, whoever covers his brother's faults, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cover their faults in the dunya and the akhirah. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ الْعَبْدِ مَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there. He will be there. He will assist his servant as long as his servant is there to assist his brother. This is part of our deen. We are people that engage in service. There's no that's core to our faith. When you read the Quran and you understand the Quran, you understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is communicating that to you. He's communicating that to you in various ways. And service looks different. And he communicates that to you in the Quran in different ways. But we have to be in the business of helping other people. So all of these things that I'm mentioning to you, brothers and sisters, impact your life. Engaging and embracing these concepts impacts your life positively, and ignoring and not engaging and embracing these concepts will impact your lives negatively. In addition to service, we have to honor those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we have to honor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to honor our parents. He tells us to honor those who have seniority. He talks about this in the Quran. Honor your parents, honor those who have seniority. And I wanted to say something today about the seniority. That's something that culturally we struggle with. It's become an issue. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith narrated by Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhuma. I'm sorry, عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من لم يرحم صغيرنا ويعرف حق كبيرنا فليس منا. It's a hadith narrated in the collection of the Sunan of Abu Dawud, in which he says that Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As that whosoever does not demonstrate mercy and compassion to our young, and does not honor those who have seniority, they're not amongst us. When the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that that person is not amongst us, that means that your characteristics and your behavior is not consistent and aligned with Islam. So culturally, right now, we are struggling with the notion that someone who is older than me can give me direction. Simply put. Someone who is older than me can give me direction. They have a right to give me direction. And I don't have a right to disrespect them simply because I don't like what they said to me or how they said it to me. I would not be where I'm at today if I had that attitude. Because I'm going to tell you something. My mama would tell you the exact same thing. We both came home after years of studying and coming back and thinking that you knew something. We were both put in our place. I don't care how much Quran you know. I don't care how much Arabic you know. You sit down and be quiet because you have a lot to learn. And nowadays, these conversations we can't have with the generation that's under us because, you know, they're caught up in their feelings. They're caught up in their feelings. You say something, it's like, you know, we go and tell them, no, they don't go that way. See, because the generation that's before you, they have something you don't have. They got something you ain't got that you need. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is on us. Raising young people, and we don't want them to experience any hardship or any pain. We don't want to tell them no. I want you to think about this, and I want you to think, because, I mean, a lot of you are aware of how a lot of young people are being raised today. You can't lose. Everybody has to win. That's not real. In life, people win and people lose. That's real. That's real. You're not going to go through life and not experience hardship. That's real. You're not going to go through life and no one's going to tell you no. That's real. You're going to be told no. You're going to experience hardship, and you're not always going to get your way. And you don't have the right to cross boundaries and cross lines and be disrespectful. You don't have that right. You don't have that right. I don't care what you know. I don't care how many degrees you got. I don't care how smart you think you are. There is no spirituality in being disrespectful. If you have no adab, then unfortunately, I don't know what to tell you. If you have no adab, I can't teach you anything. That's plain and simple. The scholars say, if you have no adab, I can't teach you an ayah from the Quran because you have no adab. You learn some adab first, then come to me, we'll talk. Until then, ain't gonna work because those two don't mix. Righteousness and disrespect, those are opposites. Those are opposites. So I can't make dua, and I got that in me. I'm arrogant, that can't nobody tell me nothing. Can't nobody give me no direction. But I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something. How is that supposed to work? That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Last thing I want to share with you today, brothers and sisters, with regards to our dua is the importance of not crossing the boundaries that I just talked about. You can't be in the habit of crossing all kinds of boundaries. Wronging everybody. Nobody's safe from you. Then you want to make dua. You're oppressive to everybody, but you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show you some mercy and some compassion. Oh Allah, help me. You're stepping on people and stepping over people. Allah, give me. You're walking by people on a regular basis. But you're going to ask your Lord for something. No, that's not how that goes. And that's not your Islam. That's not your Islam. Everything that I mentioned to you today is in the Quran and the Sunnah. And everything that I mentioned to you today is the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everything that I mentioned to you today is the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how he lived his life. Now, sometimes when we hear the question, how are you living? Just question we ought to ask ourselves all the time. How am I living? And simply because I pray 5 times a day and, I try, doesn't mean that I'm living as I'm supposed to be living or as I could be living. We can't be complacent, comfortable. The moment you let your guard down, Shaitan is right there waiting. Even when you got your guard up, Shaitan is right there trying to figure out how I can get through that wall. He's trying to figure that out. Healthy habits, brothers and sisters. Healthy spiritual habits. And dua is a major part of your faith. Dua is a major part of your faith. It's a major part of your Islam. And we have to be in the habit. You can't have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without dua. And we have to make dua. We have to call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always. Not just often, always. And across the spaces of our lives. Good, bad, success, failure, protection, guidance. You either rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or you rely on your nafs. You rely on you, what you think you know, and how bad you think you are, how great and awesome you think you are, how you think you got it all figured out. You can't humble yourself enough to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, give me, guide me. Ya Allah, protect me. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgive us all on this blessed day of Jum'ah. He accept from us all on this blessed day of Jum'ah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات من كل ذنب واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبيه الكريم وبعد. Brothers and sisters in faith, often when we're struggling, we search for answers, and a lot of times we're looking for something that's deep and complicated. And Islam is not deep and complicated. Islam is not deep, and Islam is not complicated. But your Islam requires that you do work. And the work that we talk about every week is work that you have to do with yourself. That we all have to do with ourselves in order for us to better our position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's not going to happen through wishful thinking. That's not going to happen without us making some true sacrifices. Sacrificing those things that we like. If it's not good for you, then it has to go. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. And He takes care of you in spite of you. Whether you realize it or not. He takes care of you in spite of you. The more we invest in ourselves spiritually, the better lives we will lead. And we have to do ourselves, and we talk about this every week, about the importance of doing right by you. What we talked about today, that's about you doing right by you. Your Lord does not need your dua. He needs nothing from you. He needs absolutely nothing from you. You're in need of Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't need to have a relationship with you. He doesn't need you to call on Him. He doesn't need anything from you. You're the one that's in need. And you have to act as if you're in need. You have to live as if you're in need of Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not sometimes, all the time. Not when you're forced to remember Him. Because sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will force you to remember Him. Not just when you're forced to remember Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you're in it, but it's that you remember Him habitually. It's a habit. A lot of what we talked about today are things that should be a habit for you. And when things are a habit for you, they will come to you naturally. So trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be a habit. Remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be a habit. Engaging in service has to be a habit. Not crossing boundaries and lines and honoring other people has to be a habit. Has to be a habit. And making it a habit requires work from you. Requires work from you. Your presence here today, when you come to Jama'ah, and I've said this before, and I will continue to remind myself and remind you why we're here. We're here for a reminder. That's the purpose of Jama'ah. You come to Jama'ah, you come to be reminded. You come to be reminded. When you read the Quran, and inshallah, whatever, inshallah, by Allah's grace, whatever you hear from the member will be aligned and consistent with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is communicating to you in the Quran. It's consistent. So I can't read the Quran and, I'm reading this verse and I'm struggling. If you're struggling with something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in his book, there's nothing wrong with the book. There's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the book. There's nothing wrong with the Quran. There's something wrong with you. So I'm reading the Quran and I'm coming up with this whacked out interpretation. It's not the Quran. It's me. It's me. I gotta fix me. Whatever it is that I have to do with me in order for me to be aligned with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word, I have to figure out how to do that. That's our daily challenge. It's our daily challenge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not placed anything on us that we cannot bear. That's Quran as well. Surah Al-Baqarah. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. You have the capacity to change your life. You have the capacity to change your life. Be about the work. And I'm going to leave you with that today. The weekly reminder that I normally leave you with, today I'm leaving you with be about the work. Be about your work. The work that will get you, inshallah, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgives us all on this blessed day of Jum'ah. I pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that He strengthens us in faith on this blessed day of Jum'ah. I pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the will and the strength to overcome ourselves on this blessed day of Jum'ah. I pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses us with kindness and compassion, so that we can be worthy recipients of His compassion and His mercy. I pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accept our tawbah on this blessed day of Jum'ah, that He gives us the wisdom and the will to make tawbah today. That we make tawbah today and that we take advantage of the blessing of Jum'ah. That we turn to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely. That we turn to Him sincerely and beg His forgiveness. That we become people who habitually turn to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala in istighfar, seeking His forgiveness and begging His pardon. ألا وصلوا على سيد المرسلين وإمام المتقين فقد أمركم الله بذلك في كتابه العزيز فقال جل من قائل إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما ويقول عليه أفضل الصلاة والتسليم من صلى عليه مرة صلى الله عليه بها عشرة اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله العظيم الجليل يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Brothers and sisters, before we pray, just one last word of advice. When you make dua, always send prayers and salutations upon messengers. Do not, again, you cheat yourself when you don't do that. Always, that has to be part of your dua. That's another one of those healthy spiritual habits.